In the first practical lesson, we'll cover how to animate letterings in which all of the letters are of the same thickness and created using stroke on the example of this animation. This is the simplest lettering as stroke letters are easy and quick to reveal, and stroke gives a bunch of opportunities for animation. In the example of this animation, we will cover the entire process step by step from working with the source file to the final render. Let's move on to After Effects. The first thing that we need to do is prepare the lettering for animation. Let's select the vector source file and create a new composition out of it. We can see that the composition is set to Full HD. We can either scale up the source file or scale down the composition. I'll set the composition down to HD and create a background layer right away. Next, let's convert the vector layer into a shape one. We have two options here. The first option is that we can right-click Create Shapes from Vector Layer, and we get a shape layer that has already been pre-divided into parts in Illustrator, into these groups here. Let's undo that. The second way, the one I prefer, is using the Motion Tool script, which has the Convert to Shape button. By holding Alt and clicking it, the script converts the layer into a shape and deletes the vector source. And that's exactly what we need. Since we're going to animate each letter individually, we have to extract these groups to separate layers. And Motion Tools along with the Extract button come in handy here as well. It will extract all of our groups. Let's now quickly rename the layers. This way we've prepared the source for animation. Let's get down to revealing the letters. Let's open the tab of the first L letter. As you can see, it's just a path with a stroke. In our case, it's enough to apply the Trim Paths tool and animate the start and end parameters to reveal the letter. Let's practice it in a separate composition. Apply the Trim Paths tool. Animate its start parameter. Create the keyframes and animate it from 100 to 0. And adjust the easing. Like this, for example. And that's all you have to know about revealing letters that were created using stroke. Let's then figure out how to enhance the revealing of the letters with this colored trail. This is a common technique that is fast to create and which adds variety to your lettering. Let's duplicate the layer with the letter. Offset it by 1 frame. And change the color of the lower layers. By doing so, we get this trail that appears before the letter itself, kind of revealing it. But in fact, this is the same letter that lies underneath and reveals itself a bit earlier. As you can see, there's a small issue. The edge of the lower layer doesn't look neat. Let's fix this. Delete the lower layers. Duplicate the main layer once more. Copy the keyframes from the start to the end parameter, and offset it by a couple of frames. This way the line will get revealed and then disappear. Let's then repeat the same steps as in the first attempt. Put down these two layers under the main one and offset it. Let's then recolor it. We can see the same result as the first time, but we've also removed the lower layers so that they don't stick out from the first one. Great! Let's then figure out how to reveal a letter from a line. It's easy to do as well, and you've encountered this in the lines lessons. But I still want to quickly brush up this technique. Select the outermost point of the path. Select the pen tool and draw a path from which you want the letter to start. Try to achieve a neat and rounded path. Then, in the end parameter, you need to find a value after reaching which the letter must stop. In this case, your reference point is the start point of the letter. Drag the keyframe to frame 0. Copy the easing. And offset it by a couple of frames. Ready. We're done with revealing a single letter. It's time to get down to our lettering. Reveal the remaining letters and build the overall rhythm and dynamics of revealing the entire lettering. We've animated the start property of the trim paths parameter of the letter L. Now we need to similarly animate the trim paths parameter of the remaining letters. To quickly copy the animated property and paste it to the other letters, we'll just use the layer search bar. Let's copy the already animated trim paths parameter by pressing Ctrl+C. Select the letters we want to paste it into. We need to paste it to the Contents menu. Type in Contents in the search bar. Only this menu gets filtered. Holding down Ctrl, select it for all letters and press Ctrl+V. The animated trim paths has been added to all of the letters. But there's a problem here. Many letters are being animated in the direction that's opposite to what we need. To fix this problem, we have to reverse the trim path's direction. Now the letter reveals itself as we need it to. Let's do the same with the remaining letters. There we are. Then we have to build the overall rhythm of revealing the lettering. It's a simple linear revealing in our version. This is what the timeline looks like. I mean, linear keyframes and strict sequence. Try to recreate this yourself. But this rhythm suits specifically this approach using loops. Unless you add some expressiveness, this rhythm will look really boring. Let's create a more interesting rhythm for revealing. Let's rebuild the existing linear one. Let's outline the plan. We'll have a pause here, and then a fast writing of the next letters, slowing down again, and the fast ending with the fading at the very end. Let's start with the letter L. Create the keyframe where we want to create the slowing down. Adjust hovering there. Space the keyframes out slightly to provide more time for the pause and revealing the entire letter. Then there's a fast revealing of 3 letters. Let's shift the layers so that the letter O is drawn right after the letter L, and the G and O are quickly revealed. Let's start hovering on the T. Space the keyframes out and adjust the graphs to create a longer hovering. There we are. Then 3 more letters are being written. And on the final E, we'll make a quick start and slow fading of speed. Let's shift the second keyframe to the right to make the drawing even smoother. We've achieved this interesting result. To better work on the feeling of rhythm and pauses, try to arrange the pauses on your own, yet in different parts of the logo. If you're not yet sure how to better arrange them, try to write this word with a pen on paper and pay attention to where you pause. Speed up and slow down when writing. In this part of the lesson, you'll learn how to create these stretches on the letters. This approach with the use of loops is commonly used just with thin letterings with the same thickness of lines. It seems like the letters weave themselves into their places like fine threads. It looks cool. We've achieved this result. This technique is based on stretching a letter. It works like this. At first, you stretch the letter's path, and then you pull it down as the letter reveals itself. By doing so, you achieve this effect. And after adding revealing using trim paths, you'll see the desired effect. Let's move on to After Effects. I've used the create null from path script to create these stretchings. I stretched the letter at first, and then I pulled down the nulls as it was revealing itself. But there was an issue since the null didn't let me access the Bezier points, and the loops were quite crooked. So I animated the problem areas frame by frame. It took me a long time. Pay attention that the rounded red line looks much better compared to the black one. But there are two workarounds that'll help you save your time and fix the crooked loops problem. They allow you to adjust the Bezier points. The first one is the free Duik script. You can download it from the official website. See the link attached to the description. Select the path of the letter. Go to the settings. Click Add Bones. You can see that it creates controllers on the points of the path. And it additionally creates two controllers for each of the nulls to adjust the Bezier points. This is exactly what allows us to create an even and nice looking arc. But the problem with it is that it's very demanding because all the controllers are in fact shape layers. Take into account that there are 7 more letters, and the author will have a hard time adjusting them. The second workaround is also a free script. Create null from path extended. The link is attached to the description. The only difference from the standard one is the handle controls checkbox here. And if we select the path and click points follow nulls, with the handle controls checkbox ticked, it will create the same amount of the controllers as in Duik. But the difference is that they're null objects. That's why the script works quickly. Now we'll stretch the letter L. We already have the trim paths animated. Let's create controllers on the points of the path. Select the path of the letter. Check the handle controls checkbox. That's the one that creates the additional controllers of the Bezier handles. Click the points follow nulls button. As you can see, a lot of null objects have appeared. They're all big and it's not clear how to adjust anything. Let's first reduce the size of the additional null. It's convenient that they're of the same color. So let's right-click a label of one of them and click Select Label Group. You can see that the layers of the same color have been selected. Press S on the keyboard to access their scale property, and reduce the scale down to 10%. It's getting easier. Now we have to reduce the size of the main controllers. We won't be able to use scale for that as it stretches additional controllers, and we change the path of the object. So with the null selected, press Ctrl-Shift-Y, and solid settings will pop up. Here we can safely change the size of any null object. There we are. Let's now do the same with the remaining main controllers. Great. Let's now get down to animation. You can see that the 2 points are positioned very closely together. Let's parent the controllers to each other. It's working as it should. Let's animate the stretching. Pull out the main controller. It's time to create a nice looking arc. The obvious solution is finding the right additional controllers and animating them. And we'll achieve the necessary result. But there's one more interesting solution. That is animating the scale parameter of the main controller. Let's delete the keyframes of the additional controllers. Create a keyframe on the scale and increase it. You can see that the Bezier handles space out as we're doing so, and this creates the necessary arc. Let's shift the keyframes to the right places and set the timing. And one more advantage the controllers have is that we can apply bounce to them, which we will. Let's reduce the amplitude down to 5 and increase decay up to 80. We're going to apply these bounce settings to the remaining controllers. Let's hide the extra controllers we're not going to animate. Only this part is going to be involved. We're also going to need this null object. Let's hide the rest. Let's animate the very start of the letter to make it seem like the letter flies into its place. Let's pull out the null object by position. Let's pull out the Bezier point. Decrease the scale down to 0, and by doing so, we remove the points in the main controller. Let's shift the animation to the beginning. Apply bounce to it. Adjust the animation. Let's animate one more point. Let's get down to the second loop and adjust it similarly to the first one. Let's animate the position and scale parameters. Apply bounce to it. The animation is ready. We've similarly animated the remaining letters. Let's get down to the next step. Let's add details to the lettering. Next, we need to animate the starting element that begins our animation and with which we'll prepare the viewer to the main lettering. I've decided to draw this line that flies out, slows down twice, and then flies into the main lettering. Let's draw the line's path. Let's make its thickness the same as the lettering itself. Animate the end parameter. Let's mark off the points in which the line slows down. Then adjust the speed graph. Copy the keyframes from the end parameter and paste them to the start parameter. Let's shift them by a few frames. Find the moment when the lettering animation begins. You can see that the line is fluid and gaps appear. So let's animate the path parameter of the starting line for a few frames. Great. We've achieved a seamless transition. Now it only remains to add speed lines, and we're done with revealing the lettering. Speed lines are essential to emphasize the speed of the movement. In our case, we've highlighted the speed of the loops. We're going to emphasize them. For example, let's add it to the loop of the letter G. Let's draw a thin stroke that approximately repeats the movement of the loop. Don't position it too closely to the object. Let's add the trim paths parameter. Let's animate its end parameter from 0 to 100. Press F9 and adjust the speed graph. Since the movement is sharp, we'll adjust the graph in such a way that it's as sharp as possible and smoothly fades out at the end. Let's copy the keyframes from the end and paste them to the start. Let's offset it by a couple of frames. We've got this animation. Too fast. Let's move the outermost keyframes aside. Adjust the path parameter. Great. Let's create one more speed line for the letter T, for example. Let's copy the already animated trim paths from the previous line and paste it to the new one. Here are the two highlights we've got. Then we've similarly added more speed lines and got this animation. We've achieved this fast and sharp revealing of the lettering. What remains is to animate its disappearance. We've animated the disappearance to be in line with the thin trail lines. Let's figure out how to achieve that in the example of the letter L. Let's apply trim paths to the letter. Animate its end parameter from 100 down to 0. Let's adjust the easing so that it gains speed towards the end. This is a typical easing for disappearance. The smooth beginning serves as anticipation. Next, we have to create a couple of thin trails. Let's duplicate the letter, drag it underneath, and set its stroke thickness to 1 pixel. You can see that a thin trail appeared. This is the lower letter that we've shifted in the timeline. But I want to break it down into 3 parts. into shorter lines. We can do this by using the trim paths settings. Let's change the start parameter. In this case, it adjusts the length of the line. Let's now copy the start value and paste it to the last keyframe of the end parameter, so that the line disappears just at the moment where we've limited it with the start parameter. And we achieve this animation of the end parameter from 100 down to 78. Let's additionally animate the offset parameter. It adds movement to the line. Let's copy the easing. Offset it by a couple of frames. Let's turn on the main layer and see what's changed. We need a different easing. Let's use the Motion Tools panel. There. Now we need to create two more parts. Let's select the necessary properties and press Ctrl G to create a group. Let's duplicate this group. We'll again change the value of the start parameter and limit the line to change its position. Then, just as we did with the first line, copy the start value and paste it into the last keyframe of the end parameter. Let's change the beginning of the line once more. Change the end parameter. And we've achieved this result. Let's turn on the main layer with the letter and adjust the easing and timing. Let's duplicate group 2 and create a second trail. You can see that because of the offset, a corner of the line starts to stick out on the other edge. Let's decrease the offset. As a result, we've achieved this lettering animation. Good luck with your homework assignment.